Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. So, guys, yesterday we had Errol Spence v Danny Garcia. And Errol Spence put on a clinic. What a fighter. You know, Errol Spence is a guy that I was worried about. I was really worried about Errol Spence. If I'm totally honest with you, I didn't know whether he was going to be the same fighter. After coming back from an horrific accident like that, I thought he was slurring in his speech. I thought he didn't sound great. Now, some people said, you know, his teeth, he had new teeth in, so he's getting used to them. But then I said, hold your horses. Let's see his performance on Saturday night, and we'll comment after that. And wow, all we have to do is applaud, because Errol Spence is a great fighter, and I've always said that I favor him against Crawford. And on that performance, listen, I'm impressed by Crawford now as well, because I know that guy's legit. He may not have the names that Spence has on his resume, but he's still a great fighter. That's a fight I think we all want to see, but that's another video. But I want to congratulate Spence. Literally dominated Garcia in that fight. You know, he came out and he was sharp. I felt like, you know, about round 9, he started taking the foot off the gas, and Garcia managed to win a few rounds. I think he won 9, 10, 11. I think Spence might nick 12. But I was like, all right, why is Spence stepping off the gas? But I knew that Spence wouldn't stop Garcia. Garcia's too tough. You know, I have to say Garcia is very, very tough. And Garcia is a great fighter, by the way. You know, he's a guy he's done a lot. I don't think he gets the credit, because I don't think his skill set is an elite level skill set. And there's you know, he at times can seem flat-footed, but his dad was right in the pros fight interview that why didn't you know, Danny wasn't active enough. I think if you look at what Danny Garcia did in the 12th round, where he started letting hands go, I don't know why Danny Garcia didn't do that earlier. Why didn't he start throwing those hands like that? Because we know Garcia's got power, and if he had landed flush on Spence, he could have hurt him. You know, there was a couple of times where I thought he landed on Spence and he buzzed him. You know, but I just don't think I think Danny Garcia was too worried about what was coming back, because Spence can punch as well. You know, and it's all right saying, yeah, he's got a granite chin, which Garcia has got a granite chin. But when you're in there and you're taking punches off someone and he's hitting and they hurt, it's easier to say, yeah, I want to go in and just let my hands go, because when you're getting punched in the face, it's hurting you. So we on the outside that are not getting punched, we'll say, oh, why isn't he letting his hands go? Yeah, it's a lot easier to say when you're not getting punched by Errol Spence. When you're getting punched in the face, it's a lot harder to just throw caution to the wind, because you know what's coming back is hurting you. So I think Danny Garcia, from that point of view, I think he was hesitant because of the power that Spence had. It wasn't the fact that, you know, I think he was, you know, he was gun shot, or he was gun shy. I just think it was the fact that he was gun shy because of the power that Spence had. You know, Spence at times was bullying him, beating him up at times in the fight. But like I said, Danny Garcia has a champion's heart. He's a warrior. You know, he's not a type of guy to go out, you know, faint-hearted. He comes to fight. But Errol Spence is a great fighter. He's a great boxer. He's a great puncher, puncher. He's a big, strong boy. You know, a lot of people favor Terence Crawford after seeing the performances against Porter and Garcia, because although he did well last night, people were probably expecting even a little more, just because of the high standards we expect from Errol Spence. However, let's not forget, I know Terence Crawford's been looking more impressive, but he has been fighting lesser competition as well. He has been fighting lesser competition, like neither Khan or Brook or Kavalauskas are even in the top 10. Or Benavidez are even in the top 10 welterweights. If you looked at the welterweight division and they looked at the top 10 rankings, neither Khan, Brook, or Kavalauskas were in there, or Benavidez were even in that top 10. So Spence fought Porter, he fought Danny Garcia, both like top 5. So it kind of shows you the gulf in class that, you know, Spence is fighting and what Crawford's fighting. You know, Crawford's not even fighting guys that are not even in the top 10, really. So I think we need to take that into account. That when you're fighting the better guys, obviously you're going to get exposed a lot more. And listen, at one point in their, obviously, Khan and Brook at one point in their careers were in the top 10 easily. They were probably in the top 5 at one point, both of them. But the fact is they're not anymore. And they're not the fighters that they were. You know, so unfortunately, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, they were before, but they're not anymore. And when it comes to what Spence is fighting guys that are currently in the top 10. I will say that I do think Danny Garcia's now career may be on the slide. I don't think I think Garcia now may be seen as an opponent. And he's a big name, he's a big star, but I think let's see what Danny Garcia does from here, because I do think that Danny Garcia may be viewed as an opponent now. I think Danny Garcia is in danger now of becoming a guy that might get 5 or 6. If he carries on, he may get 5 or 6 losses, because that invincibility factor that Danny Garcia once had is gone. He lost to Thurman, he lost to Porter, and he's lost to Spence. Unfortunately, in the welterweight division, when you look at the true welterweights that Danny Garcia's fought, unfortunately, he's come out second best. And he's a great fighter at 140. But unfortunately, at 147, he's had a good win against Guerrero. But there's a lot of... He's not had that... His run at 147 has been nowhere near as stellar as it was as a 140. And I think he's definitely on the slide. He's definitely on the slide. He's definitely on the slide, Danny Garcia. You know, still a good fighter. Still a good fighter. But as a fighter, he's on the slide. I feel like yesterday he was a lot more gun-shy. And... I just think that I don't think Danny Garcia is probably the same guy he was when he fought Khan or when he fought Matisse. I think he's definitely a guy on the slide. So I think Errol Spence, however, I think Errol Spence is at the peak of his powers. And Errol Spence, to do what he did yesterday, I was very impressed. Very impressed. And he was quite harsh on himself. I actually thought it was a very great performance, bearing in mind the fact that, you know, he came back from what he came back from. To put in a performance like that, I wasn't expecting it. I expecting the fight to be a little bit closer. But, you know, Spence was just showed that the accident didn't affect him, and he was great. You know, I think it was more ring rust, the fact that he hadn't been in the ring for so long. But in terms of Spence, I think Spence is a world-class fighter. I think Spence now is a man that deserves a lot of credit. He deserves a lot of credit for what he did last night. Or last night here last morning, this morning actually, because it was morning here in the UK. But listen, I think Spence now needs big fights. I think Spence now needs the big boys like Pacquiao and Crawford. You know, he talked about a Canelo fight. Listen, I think that's going to happen, and I actually think now that fight with Canelo one day will happen. I'm very confident, because I feel that Spence genuinely believes that he's a big boy. You know, he bullied Danny Garcia at times in there. You know, he was a lot bigger than Danny Garcia, a lot stronger. And Garcia, like I said, has got a granite chin. So he's not going to get knocked out. Listen, Garcia's chin is unbelievable. Like, he's taken so many shots throughout his career, but it just doesn't seem like never seen him hurt. The only time I saw him hurt is against Thurman, where Thurman hit him with a huge right hand and it kind of buckled him. But he just recovered so quick. The man's got an absolute granite chin. An absolute granite chin, and he deserves a lot of credit. Props, really. You know, he's a warrior. And like I said, I do think he's kind of on the slide now. But let's see what Danny Garcia decides to do. You know, I won't be surprised if he even calls it a day. He's made a lot of money. He probably thinks that, where is there for me to go? There are still fights out there for Danny Garcia. There are still some big money fights out there for Garcia. I think there are fights out there. I think there are fights out there. I would love to see certain fights. I think there's fights there, Danny Garcia and maybe a Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia and a Virgil Ortiz. That's a great fight. And here, I think, yeah, I think there's some, I think there's some good fights out there for the Garcia. I think Spence, obviously, everybody knows Pacquiao or Crawford next. Garcia, he's still a good fighter. He still can fight some good names and make some good money. But I don't think whether Garcia is going to be at world title level anymore, in the sense that, is he going to get another shot because he got a shot against Thurman and lost, or he was a champion, he didn't get a shot. He was a champion and he lost, and then he fought Porter for the title and he lost, and now he fought Spence for the title and lost. It's kind of for Garcia now. I don't see him getting a title shot now, unless he works himself into position, which is going to be difficult because there's a lot of young guns now coming up, like a Virgil Ortiz, who's going to be a problem. And those are the kind of names that Garcia may have to face if he wants to work his way back to world title level. And Virgil Ortiz, in my opinion, would beat Garcia right now. I think Virgil Ortiz is a dangerous fighter. And that would be a great fight. But I think Garcia should more look at fighters that are at his stage of his career. Like a Thurman, Even a fight with Amir Khan here in the UK, I think, will be massive. Now that Garcia's lost, right, if Garcia still continues to fight, now I know people would favor Garcia heavily in that fight, but I still think that that's a big fight. I still think that, especially if Amir Khan is serious about coming back in 2021 and can get himself back together, I think that's a good fight. I do think that's a huge fight. Garcia would be a favorite in that fight, but still a fight that, I wouldn't mind seeing. For Errol Spence, I think Errol Spence Crawford is the fight that everybody wants to see. Let's see if the Crawford fight happens. Let's see if Bob Arum and Al Heyman can get together and make that fight. Really, it's a logical fight. That or Pacquiao. I would love to see Errol Spence fight Keith Thurman, because I think Keith Thurman's a better boxer than Garcia, and I think he's a bigger puncher. And I think that would be a very intriguing fight. I would favor Errol Spence just because I think Thurman's not the same man. And even if Thurman was the same man, Spence showed me different class yet last night. He beat Garcia better than anyone beaten Garcia. So I think that's definitely a great fight as well. Definitely a great fight. But I think the logical fights next for Spence are definitely Pacquiao and Crawford. Let's see if they happen. Leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you thought of Spence's performance. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video.